Welcome back to our video narratives, number 7, Summation and Conclusions, part 3. In this video narrative, we will share a few key conclusions with you, drawn from an overall view of the Awaken25 Video Narratives Presentations 1 through 6, wherein we have presented the vital importance of values in our lives and culture, along with the many issues surrounding this subject. We think and believe the story and subject matter of Awaken25.com is a vital story for us to hear, more so for us to understand. As individually, we invariably seek to better our lives with a clearer and more meaningful purpose, to grow ourselves and discover who we are and who we should be and where we should go. And we should all recognize we're not in this life quest alone. We are many, and from all diverse walks of life, from every gender and every social strata, from every religion and creed. We are all seeking our purpose, special and unique to us within our collective world, and we seek how to realize that purpose most successfully and with the greatest certainty. At Awaken25.com, we are thankful for your time, your interest, and patience in hearing this vital story, as listening to it, understanding it, may well change your life. For some, it may be just a little change, for others perhaps much more. Yet, any change in a better direction is a good change, and our hope for you is just that. Approaching the subject we introduced through Awaken25.com is to confront a large and complicated picture, with many parts in motion, atop an underlying set of unforeseen forces at work. Quite dynamic when it's all viewed together. Some would say it's akin to staring into the abyss, as the complexity of the issue seems endless and imposing, and ever-changing, especially when you try to make sense of it all. We would offer, it's more like confronting a giant maze, imposing and mysterious, one that beckons us forth to enter as we're prodded along the path of life. Yet the very reality of entering the maze poses the stark reality of a great challenge in the purpose of our lives. Can we successfully navigate through it, or do we succumb to the risk of the maze consuming us in its den of many paths? The maze is in fact our surrounding culture and society, and it's a metaphor for our life and how we live through culture. The maze unquestionably has many deep influences upon and throughout our lives, yet it poses for us both great opportunity for our lives as well as great potential risk. At Awaken25.com, we want to help you find a pathway through, and most importantly, make sense of all the issues and subjects we've raised. Yes, life is and can be a great maze to many of us, and it's daunting as it is imposing, with its different passages, experiences, trials, and tribulations. In a way of guidance, we offer this. If we confront it alone, chances are we won't be getting through. However, if we work together, we can and will find the way. We invite you to enter the maze with us and draw some important conclusions together about values, our culture, our society, and our daily lives, about all the issues and concerns we brought forth in our Awaken25 video narratives. To start, we ask you to step back with us at first, relax, and just listen to the music. Listen to what's filtering through the maze, is repeated, and reveals itself. Listen, patiently, and with conviction. And ask yourself, what are you hearing? What themes, ideas, criticisms, concerns are coming through? From people in your everyday life, from your social institutions, in your communities, from your families and friends, from your churches and schools, from your leaders. What are you hearing through all the noise and daily clamor of your world? Equally, what are you not hearing? That's just as important. What doesn't have a voice or is being suppressed? Are you hearing about values in your life? Are they good ones, life-building? Or are they life-destroying? Are you encouraging the good values in your families? Are the good values being supported by the institutions in society? What is mass communication saying to us, to our children? What are we hearing for messages, the right ones or the wrong ones? Has the tone or content changed, or is it what has always been? And last, as we ponder what we hear or don't hear, we need to self-reflect, looking within ourselves, our lives, our surrounding, and ask ourselves, what are we seeing in our churches, in the halls of government, on the TV and the internet? What are we seeing in our own lives? What are we standing for, aspiring towards? And likewise, what are we standing against or hiding from? What are our beliefs and what are they founded upon? Do I really know what life is all about and where it's taking me? Or am I just going along for the ride? What about my family and loved ones? What's the music in our culture, in our society, in our lives saying to us? Well, we hear a lot of music coming through, and we're going to share it with you now in some discussion and conclusions, which we hope will assist you in understanding very clearly the most essential things we've been talking about throughout our Awaken25 video narratives. So what do you suppose we're hearing as we listen to the music? This is what we hear when we listen to our culture, when we listen to how we can understand our lives better in this world, and find our way through the maze of life, to a more focused purpose and a clearer destiny for ourselves and our loved ones. This is what we hear. We hear quite clearly, and it's our very first conclusion, we have a purpose, we all do, and while we're here on earth, we have a marvelous opportunity to realize it. The purpose is simple, and it starts with one four-letter word, life. The pursuit of the glorious cycle of life, in all its marvel from birth to youth, from youth to old age, and then beyond. We see life as the catalyst, the inspiration, and purpose of our very being, and we genuinely believe it's so, for you, as it is for all humanity. Life, we would emphasize, is a rare and precious gift. We don't always realize this, and consequently, many of us take it for granted, trivializing life by squandering opportunities as empty pursuits are chased. We affirm life has a reason, and it is sacred and precious, and fundamental to our very being, generously reflected in the marvelous composition of our body human. We must recognize, though, life is bigger than ourselves alone, as it extends out from our being into the world around us, into and inclusive of others, into and inclusive of the wildlife we see, the forests and rivers we explore, the oceans deep and the air we breathe. Life is in the creatures, great and small, and all of it grandly incorporated into one. And life is known by the quality of our hearts, expressed in our thoughts, and carried into our actions. Life is not static or mere notion. It is active engagement with others in our world. Life is pure, and by essence, it is forever. Giving, creating, protecting, enabling, and perpetuating life all around us. We offer that life is the innate drive in ourselves, to live by growing in both mind and heart, to engage and energize our curiosity, to learn and become more than who we are, and discover more than we understand, through our perseverance to expand our wisdom through faith and love of God. We see life as at the center of God's magnificent, majestic, and universal creation. Light on form, through form, inclusive of those worlds unseen, yet are nonetheless. And we recognize life as the pursuit of life eternal therein, fundamental and most true to who we are. And we state without reservation, this is our vital purpose, the pursuit and achievement of life eternal. We recognize, deeply reflected in the marvelous composition of our human body, we are three and not just one. Body and mind we understand, yet more importantly, we are a life soul within. And third, a full spirit to be, as God develops us into a body eternal, encompassing our mind and soul as we grow into the next stage, into the cycle of life, three essence which together defines us. In our reality, as we best know and perceive it, life is truly as such. We are three and not one. And experiencing life means experiencing all three, to pursue a relentless motivation to exist and grow from one stage to the next. And we do so by awakening within ourselves and reaching into our souls, discovering God's essential truths already present in our heart, aligning to those truths as they lead us through the maze of this world, away from the snares of death and into eternal life. Truly understanding life is necessary to establish a successful perspective on where you currently are in the maze we are all in. And that understanding begins with the recognition that we are not just our body and mind. We are more. Life is more. True life is forever, in a continuing process of development, a growth in knowledge and in wisdom, a blending into God's infinite love. And this occurs through God's unfolding cycles of life, whereby we become new and eternal. We offer this true definition and understanding of what life is as our first and essential conclusion, and the starting point for successfully mastering the maze ahead. We also hear and understand quite emphatically the family in society is vital to the success of the person. The family is our nest and crucible to protect us, develop us, love us. And the healthier the family nest is, the greater an individual's chances are for development and success. It's fair to say that as human beings, we are born into a reality we do not recognize. And as we grow and learn, we eventually discover our lives are surrounded by a large and complex prevailing culture, a whirling society with an assortment of social and dynamic forces around us, engaging our lives with constant interplay and influence, hopefully good, but many times threatening and bad. That surrounding culture and society acts upon us as individuals, shaping or deconstructing who we are and who we may want to be. And each of us, uniquely, individually, are in fact so affected, standing at the center of life as we do, while culture and society constantly closes in on us, framing and encompassing the world we are in, the world we must learn how to contend with. And with us, in the center of humanity, we are not meant to stand alone. In fact, we are not alone. Our families and friends, our loved ones, grow up around us and near us. They express life as well, individually and collectively as we do. They too are at the center of humanity right along with us, and they play an essential role in our lives. We also hear in the music that when there is no loving family around you to support, protect, and enable your development, no nest for you to find safety in and call home, then life is and will be a most formidable challenge, as the darkness in culture always seeks easy prey. Its hunger will reach out for those who are alone, unless a loving family is there to shield and help them. From our families and our heritage and God, we acquire the predominant moral and human values in our lives, which in turn guide us, influencing the development of our character and the quality of the lives we eventually lead, shaping over time our deep-rooted beliefs, our philosophy, God, morality, human principles, and ideology, and helping us in realizing our unique purpose in life. In the grand culture around us, intersecting our lives with influence, there are 6 distinct and primary institutions, each of which are predominant and impactful in our society. First, there's religion and faith. There's literary, legal, and civic. Then the institutions of social and leadership, followed by the arts, music, and communications, academia, learning, and last, we have business and industry, providing the catalyst of economic energy. And these primary institutional groups cascade layers of culture around us in organizations, associations, industries, in various ideologies, philosophies, class structures, in nearly every aspect of modern society. They surround our lives and our families with communications, influence, and energy. And there we are, at the center of all of it, on the receiving end of what's pointed at us. In the music we are listening to, we hear how, through each of these institutional groups and the layers of culture, a constant daily influence is exerted upon our lives, and especially upon the moral and human values we choose to embrace, reinforcing our choices on values, on our beliefs, or undermining them with deception and corruption. We also hear the ever-continuing contention between good and evil, a contention that has been over the ages of antiquity, each side by nature appealing to our minds and hearts with very, very different messages, leading to very different destinies, each side offering us a different answer to our purpose and well-being, invariably at odds and creating a conflict of choice and reason upon ourselves and our culture. We hear and see in the music the contention we speak of, creating a test of our will and genuine faith, a weighty test to choose the source of our morality, essentially either a belief in man as the source or a belief in God. And to be sure, it's a fundamental choice for humanity to make, a belief where our morality is rightly determined and from where it is not, of which source is foundationally correct and righteous, and which is deceptive and misleading, of which source leads one to the next stage in evolving life, life eternal, or to their death, wherein life is no more. Absolute morality or relative morality, of God divine or man alone. People in all societies throughout the ages choose one or they choose the other, and in balance, the heavier choice changes the disposition of culture, and it expresses through our institutions and into our individual lives. An inspiration to honor God and divine truths, or a vanity to please man and his self-absorbed machinations. Without question, throughout our narrative presentations, we have surfaced and pointed out the threat to us and our society of moral relativism, choosing man as the center and not God. The music we have closely listened to and hear quite resoundingly says this: moral relativism is our enemy. The adherents and followers of moral relativism are dangerous and disruptive to the healthy development of our hearts and minds. They are destructive to our culture and institutions. They are the enemy. Of this, there is no question. We hold as part of our third conclusion, moral relativism has placed our contemporary society under siege. Moral relativism, acting through the political ideology of liberal progressivism, is increasingly manifesting itself today in the major primary institutions of our American culture, in human and institutional expressions, in what is emphasized or what is intentionally not, in what is allowed and what is restricted, in what is pursued and what is abandoned, in what is freed and what is controlled and censored. Moral relativism in our culture has been and continues to push God out, to diminish faith in people of faith across our institutions, especially inclusive of the leadership in them, supplanting God at the heart of humankind with morality determined by the whim of man, by relative opinion, circumstance, and ego. As a result, moral relativism has descended upon us and deepened its root into the very heart of our institutions, spreading into and across our national and world culture, and consequently into our lives. We see the spread of moral relativism as a contagious virus. It's nearly out of control, and it's occurring, with a devastating impact on society and therefore you. Moral relativists have always been in human culture, and they go by many names: atheists, agnostics, communists, socialists, progressives, and liberals. In today's contemporary society, they have openly brought relative morality into our institutions, and by consequence, directly into our homes. The leaders of moral relativism are aggressively looking to build its legitimacy in our society, and these elites are exposed by their arrogance as they put themselves in place of God, working to dominate and control your life. We hear, see, and conclude without reservation there is a dark growth of moral relativism at the center of our culture, actively displacing religion, God, and faith, and we see it as the most disruptive development upon humanity. It is without question an utter scourge upon all of us in America. This cultural malignancy, this terminal tumor, has aggressively spread across our institutions, corrupting them, and it is rapidly decimating the vigor of our culture. And we also see quite clearly, as moral relativism grows, it is causing all types of darkness and social malignancies in our society, spreading into our lives, our communities, and nation. We see moral relativism for what it is, and what it is doing to individuals, families, and society, and it is not good. It is certainly evil and therefore wrong. Moral relativity in our culture is the enemy of humankind. It is the greatest threat to our culture and society, and ultimately your life and the life of your loved ones. In a world of moral relativity, in the world of where God is pushed out, the darkness is brought forward to engulf us, manifest against our lives, especially our children and the most innocent among us, engendering harmful addictions, spurning violence, creating conflict and wars, disease and starvation, tearing apart families with children and spousal abuse, overwhelming our communities with division, polarization, and hate, tricking us with dishonesty, deception, and profanity, invading and despoiling our schools, our communications, our leadership, leading us into lies and the slavery of relativity, leading us into the greed of materialism and the emptiness of casual sex, all to an ultimate aim, to spiral people into the finality of death's grip, woefully separated from God and eternal life. And perhaps worst of all, the moral relativists in academia, communications, government, politics, Hollywood, the music industry, wherever they are applying their deceit, are deliberately targeting not just ourselves, but targeting our children, who they know are the most vulnerable to their deceit and dark intents. The moral relativists are always after the children, as they know the children represent the future, and moral relativism hungers to control the future. We see the forest and we see the trees, and the trees are indeed people. We have to soberly ask ourselves, are we going to allow moral relativity to lead us like lemons over the cliff, into a world devoid of life, lost in a forest being devoured one tree at a time, to pull our lives into the burning abyss, where truth is readily consumed, and God in our lives is the first to perish. We feel strongly that America is on the cusp of critical mass, which currently has momentum. A critical mass of fundamental change, and not an improving type of change, mind you, but one that sets us backwards into enslavement of our minds and hearts. One which has been ushered in over 5 decades and generations, in a change which has accelerated over the past several years, especially amongst our youth and institutions. We need to stop moral relativism from spreading. We need to stop it firmly and finally. We cannot allow it to metastasize across our most important institutions with its mutation and corruptive influence. We cannot allow an irreversible critical mass of moral relativism to be reached in our society. Consider for a moment a metaphor about moral relativism, a metaphor which closely resembles the truth. We start with an empty glass. Into that glass we take a moment, filling it up with 100% pure water, refreshing and healthy to life, leaving us with a full glass, ready and safe for someone to drink. Well, suppose we added just 1% of poison to the glass of water. Just 1%. What do you think happens? Well, clearly it isn't 100% pure anymore. It changes the 100% pure down to 99%, and the 1% mixes in amongst the clean water, toxifying the water. In the end, making all the water no good, despoiling what was once pure and adulterating its essence. Moral relativism is equally a poison to the purity of culture. Even 1% is enough to despoil and pollute an institution. Unfortunately, we're getting well above the 1% toxicity levels being poured into our society and the many institutions of our culture. Very clearly, moral relativism is our enemy, and not stopping or reversing it will be our annihilation. As we listen closely to the music, a central message keeps coming through quite clearly. If humankind has any hope of life ahead, God must be at the center. God divine must be our source and sustainer of the world we live in, and his essential truths must be supreme and always above man. Our culture, our society, and humanity itself will prosper and grow when love is the center point, not man. And when love is the center point, then God is paramount in our lives, and God's foundational truths shall prevail in culture, strengthening and growing life, not enslaving and destroying it. To restore God at the center of our lives and culture is to understand love in its fullest measure. And understanding love is to awaken God's essential truths in our hearts and lives, and restoring it to the rightful place at the center of humanity, at the center of our individuality, and at the center of family. The restoration of love is achieved only by awakening foundational values in each of our individual lives, defining and knowing what you stand for and what you stand against, defining and knowing what you will embrace, nurture, and teach, and what you will reject, disdain, and undo, knowing why and having faith in that answer. Only in this way will humanity be rightly balanced. Only in this way will you achieve the genuine purpose of your life. Only in this way will we truly and successfully get through the maze. God has shown us the way, and God has provided us with guiding foundational values. God wants us to get through to realize the full potential of our lives, and we must trust Him and follow His inspirations and values in our hearts. Our fifth conclusion is personal to ourselves, that is. To live fully, to live successfully, we must know ourselves. We must know ourselves well. If we don't, if we fail to know ourselves better than yesterday, we risk putting all which we know in danger of being lost forever. We need to know as best as we are able who we are and who we are not. We need to know what we aspire towards and what we despise. We need to recognize our purpose for being beyond the humdrum of daily life. We need to hear and see a clear view of these things we call values and morality and culture and family and personhood, and understand how they all successfully come together in order to help us develop and shape our lives. We must know ourselves well by knowing our faith, our family, our heritages and traditions, the fortitude of our moral character, and to know how to summon our inner courage, and when to speak and when to be silent, when to laugh and when to weep, when to be firm and when to be soft. We must know ourselves as God knows us. Knowing thyself begins with self-realization of who and what you want to be. Self-realization that we are not alone in the world, no matter what desperation we face. We are in fact loved by God, and God works with us to discover what truths we embrace in our life, what we hold dear and sacrosanct, what we are to believe in, what we are to exemplify in our daily life. We only get to the honest answers through personal self-reflection. When you take the moment, God will be there to meet you. When you know yourself, you will clearly understand what values define you, what you stand for, and what you will always stand against, with every fiber of your being. You will know what you are willing to fight for, sacrifice for, and die for. Rarest in our lives are those special moments of personal insight. It is through them, when they occur, that we discover, we learn, we change, we grow. At Awaken25.com, it's our greatest hope these discussions are enabling somehow to reach into your heart and into your mind, and prompt those insights, encourage those moments of understanding, and the vital growth which will follow. It's fair to say we're in a great fight, and we need to realize it. Values are something we have always recognized as important, key to a truly good and successful life, but make no mistake about it, you're in a fight. Call it a tug of war with the left, call it a contention between ideologies, call it a dispute between believers and doubters, call it a battle for souls, call it a distinction between truth and falsehoods, or just call it what it is. Absolute morality versus relative morality, conservative foundational versus liberal progressive. And whichever side wins in your life determines whether you'll be enslaved to moral depravity under the repressive doctrine of moral relativism, or be free to continue living and growing under God. Let's consider a somber conclusion. We have the most important human gifts at stake in this arch struggle, between the dominance moral relativists seek or the true liberty of a loving God, above, beside, and within us all. At end of days, it comes down to one very stark reality. Ultimately, the victor or loser in the contest will invariably be our children. Yes, it's a maze, and a struggle getting through it. Yet, we reassure you it can be done. Despite the noise of moral relativism in our lives, there's a greater force upon and available to us. God truths are alive and expressing in our world. We need just find them. In closing, we proceed with an optimism about humanity, in knowing that there is more good in this world than bad, and the true nature of humankind is good. And that inherent good is deliberately sought by us, will bring the necessary balance into our lives, enabling the seemingly impossible to be realized. We have but one section left to share. We call it a call to action. In this last video narrative, we will share some specific ideas on what actions we can take in our lives, as both individuals, as parents, as young adults, as human beings, and also collectively as groups, to actively engage on this immensely important subject of life, culture, values, and God in our lives, and the many issues which accompany it, especially in terms of defeating moral relativism. Now, please go to video number 8, A Call to Action.